Hi y'all, today I'm going to be giving you a guide on how to unlock the Kraken. So the Kraken is the launcher reward, and launchers is notoriously probably the hardest directive in the game, or at the very least, the most annoying one to do, because the weapons in here are very hard to get kills with normally, and quite frankly, it just sucks to do. And for that reason, the Kraken is quite commonly just farmed. I'll get into how to do that if you want to be a little bitch and farm it that way. But it's a cool launcher, it is the only directive reward launcher in the game, and it is a Decimator, so it's actually a competitive launcher to boot. A lot of people want it, it's just the directive itself is really, really dumb, to be quite honest, so I kind of want to give people a guide on how to unlock it. I do not have the Kraken myself, but I did unlock the Auraxium Miramasa when it was available on Nanite Systems, and I have Auraxium 5 launchers myself, so I have the experience, trust me. So, the Kraken largely is annoying. It's a very annoying grind if you're going to do it legitimately, and it largely comes down to what rockets you pick. So, here's the little secret, you're probably going to want to spend money on this directive. Because quite frankly, Auraxiuming your dumbfire and your ground-to-ground lock is quite a painful experience, and the faction-specific rocket launchers, the Striker, Phoenix, and Lancer, are all terrible to Auraxium. Scorpion is also a bitch, and the Annihilator and the Swarm are both definite no-goes, as they are extremely hard to put a medal on. Which really means that if you're going to do this directive the smart way, you do Decimator, Decimator Black, Decimator Gold, Masamune, and then the ground-to-air launcher, the LAV-LA, or whatever it's called. It's your standard unlock now. So, honestly, the way you use all of these launchers is largely going to be the same. Whichever one you do is largely comes down to pick your poison. They're all going to play the exact same functionally for killing infantry if you're going to do this the legitimate way. So, I'm more giving you the suggestions on how I'd recommend grinding these. So, I want to get out of the way, there is the bitch way to do this. You can just kill base turrets at unmanned bases, and you can slowly do it that way. It is painful, it is boring, and you're a little pussy if you do it, but you can. You're still a bitch. So if you're going to do this the legitimate way, the gamer way, you're going to be rocket primarying a hell of a lot. All these things are going to play exactly the same. You'll probably get quite used to the Deci as a whole, and then your ground-to-air is honestly the worst of the bunch. The Decimator is far and away the easy one here. It's just hit people in the head, or hit people in the body if they aren't flak, and if they don't have a heavy shield up, you should kill them. Once you get it down, it's a pretty easy rocket to lead. The hipfire accuracy is fine if you decide to hipfire it, but in general, you should always be firing this thing aiming down sights. It's a Decimator. You probably have experience with it, and you just rocket prime it on infantry. The Masamune is going to be almost exclusively hipfired. It's going to basically be a shotgun. As long as all 4 rockets, pellets, whatever you want to call them, land, you will one-shot somebody. However, it works at much less range than the Decimator does because you're heavily reliant on all 4 of your rockets actually landing on some poor bastard to kill them. Now, you can get funny multi-kills this way. You're not truly living until you've gotten a triple kill with 1 shotgun burst. Still, the Masamune is pretty painful, and I would heavily advise reserving it for very close quarters fights, such as biolabs, farms, ascent tunnels. It really, really depends on just how close you are. And then, lastly, your ground-to-air lock is the most painful of the bunch because you just barely one-shot. If your target has any level of flak or heavy shield up, you're not going to one-shot, and you are generally reliant on people already being injured. It's still a bit easier to lead than the other launchers here, and you do have the added advantage of being able to potentially kill some aircraft along the way, but it is without a doubt the most painful one here. It also is the worst hipfire accuracy of the bunch should you need to do that. So, now, the rockets are actually not really the main key of this video. It's the loadout. Because how you build your loadout largely depends on what you're going to do. Now, I assume if you're going for the Kraken, you are probably going to attempt to rocket primary all these things out of the way. That's what I did for Auraxium Miramasa, and it's what I would generally recommend if you just want to unlock the Kraken as fast as possible. So, your primary slot, honestly, should be a submachine gun or a pistol of your choice if you have the ASP primary. Now, there's a reason for this. You are going to miss the rocket, and when you miss the rocket, you're going to say, oh shit, what now? And this is where I would put either a submachine gun or a pistol here that you want to put the Auraxium on anyway as a backup weapon. Pick something you're comfortable with, but I'd recommend picking something you're actually going to want to grind an Auraxium medal on. For example, I Araxium the Araxium Kappa this way is a backup to my Decimators. I also managed to Araxium the Pilot in 1.5 Decimators, and I finished the Underboss, and I almost finished the Commissioner along the way. Generally speaking, both your primary and secondary are going to be good candidates for an Araxium just because they're backup weapons, and you're going to use them a lot when shit doesn't go your way. For your secondary slot, obviously you just take the pistol you want to put the metal on. It largely doesn't depend what you pick. Just pick what you like, pick what you want to put the metal on. If you have ASP, you could pick the heavy weapon secondary. I wouldn't advise it, but if you're working on, say, the heavy weapon assist or the heavy weapon Araxium for your heavy assault directive, it's a fine choice. I would just recommend picking a pistol instead. Your ability slot should be Nanomesh, a Nanite Mesh, whatever you want to call it, your standard shield. Now, there's a couple reasons for this. Resist is okay, but you still have to pre-aim it, or you still have to pre-use it a lot to get the most out of it, and in general, I just wouldn't recommend it. It's a little too clunky to use. Adrenaline Shield, I do note that I never ever asserted it here, is also not a very good pick because while Adren in theory has excellent uptime, you're using a rocket launcher. Most of the time, you're going to poke somebody, you're going to either miss or kill them with the Deci or whatever rocket you're using, and then you're going to be right back in cover, meaning you're not going to be able to sustain Adrenaline Shield to make it a justifiable pick over Nanite Mesh, which is just going to be your safe general use pick. It's also cheap, you start with it, I'd recommend just going for Nanite Mesh. Your suit slot has to be munitions pouch. It's not the reserve ammo that matters here, although it is convenient. Its holstered rocket launchers will auto-reload every 8 seconds. Now, this is still slower than manually reloading them, but if you get into certain engagements where, you know, you've missed your rocket, you're saying, oh shit, and you're trying to use your pistol or your primary or your secondary, you can come back to your rocket being fully reloaded. Do note, this does behave weirdly. So, sometimes you will come back to your rocket thinking, oh, it should be reloaded, and it's not. And from what I understand, the way munitions pouch works is that it just manually checks to see if you switch, say, items. So say you're using your primary, and then you switch to your pistol. This, from my experience and my theory, is this resets the munitions pouch auto-reload. I think. It's not exactly really well determined, and I honestly need to do some more testing on it, but just be aware that if you want to make the most of this, you will need to stay on your secondary or your primary for 8 seconds if you guarantee you come back to your rocket launcher being fully reloaded. There's also no icon for this auto-reload happening, so you're going to have to just get the feel down. Everything else here is pretty largely forgettable. None of these really benefit you. The main purpose of the rocket primary is to get into an engagement and get out of the engagement as fast as possible, and have as many rockets available as you can. Missions Pouch just lets you do this via the auto-reload. If you are willing to sit through reloads manually, you could take flak armor, as this will just generally boost your survivability and prevent you from killing yourself quite a few times. You could take ASC if you want more shield. I would just run munitions pouch though. Your grenade is largely up to whatever you want to run. It doesn't really matter. Pick whatever you like or whatever you plan to put in a shiny Araxium medal on. It doesn't really matter. It just generally doesn't really matter. If you want to work on your anti-vehicle grenade, you can. You can blow up maxes pretty easily this way. Other than that, it doesn't matter. Your utility slots has to be medkits. This will save your ass many, 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 many times. You miss your rocket or you hit your rocket, you're low, you shove that shit right into your side, and suddenly you're fairly alive again. Medkits are mandatory here, and honestly the more of them the better, but you don't need to worry about grabbing the 4th because it's fairly pricey. Ox Shield is not really worth it here, C4 is useless on this build, and the resto kits are simply too slow. Your melee is your personal preference, take whatever you pick, it doesn't matter at all. Now your implants are pretty big here. There are a couple different options here. If you're working on your pistols at the same time, Gunslinger can be a very valuable pick, because you get faster weapon swap speed after getting the kill with the pistol, and, more notably, you get faster reload speed. So, if you get a kill with your pistol, swap back onto your, say, your already shot rocket launcher, your reload speed will now be 25% faster. It's not huge, but it's nice to have, and if you're running, say, double pistols, it is a nice, substantial boost. Other perks here worth running include Athlete, because it will just make you generally more maneuverable. It helps you get in and out of situations quite a lot more. Cat-like is fine if you're crouching a lot, or if you want the jump height boost. Otherwise, it's pretty safely avoided. A lot of these implants here don't really help you in a lot of ways. Mobility Mesh can be a decent pick here because it will just simply make you move faster while your mesh is up. I didn't run it, but does have some viability. I would probably not take it, but you can if you want to. Nanomesh is also okay depending on how reliant you want to be on your shield, but I generally wouldn't run it. The other stuff here, Sidewinder is very, very good because it will make your strike speed better. And this means that you can peek in and out of corners with your rocket launcher just that little bit faster, which can keep you alive. It's very, very nice to have. It's not mandatory, but it's very, very nice to have. Survivalist is huge. It's basically your oh shit, get out of jail. You break your shield after dumping your rocket into somebody's head, and you book it. Because if you don't, you're probably gonna die, and Survivalist will help you get away from those engagements a lot easier. It's not mandatory, but it is extremely nice, and it will save your life many, many times. Pretty much every other implant here is just simply not worth running, because they don't really benefit you. Because as I mentioned, the core of this build at the end of the day is to get in, fire your rocket, and get the hell out of dodge really quick. Anything that does not help you do that, or keep your rocket well fed, such as munitions pouch, is generally not worth taking. As for the reasons why I'd recommend a submachine gun or a pistol, I should have covered this earlier, but I'm just thinking about it now, haha, it's the equip time. You don't want to miss your rocket and have to pull out your slow as shit LMG that will take half a second for you to pull up, and by then, you're just dead. A pistol or a submachine gun has a fast enough equip time to save you, and generally they should help you put out DPM. Your tac slot doesn't matter, pick whatever you want. Ordnance Stamper is good if you don't want to kill yourself, otherwise it's largely forgettable, and it locks you to a certain position. The flash is great if you just want to move around faster. Other than that, everything else here is mostly forgettable. So, it's a hard directive. It really is a hard directive, and I would advise, having unlocked the Araxian Mirror myself, so going through launchers once, I haven't done new launchers, but whatever, it's semantics. Depending on how much you're willing to put up with doing this a legitimate way, this is going to suck. I bursted through each of these launchers when I had to do them. Of course, all their times are just weird because of when the NS overhaul happened. But each launcher Araxia made me quit the game for a month or 2 months each. If you are just exclusively going at the launcher, and you are trying to bang through it as fast as possible, you are going to burn yourself out really fast. And it's something that you will need to watch yourself on. If you feel yourself getting just sick and tired of using a launcher because they're frustrating to use, they take a long time and they're frustrating to use, just step away and do another gun for a little while, work on something else, because unless you're really, really willing to put up with these to push it out, it's not a good time, and it's not worth burning yourself out over it. It's cool, don't get me wrong, the Kraken is a sweet reward, but it's not worth burning yourself out on. So, good luck, don't be a bitch, rocket primary some shitters, and have some fun. See ya.